going on, everybody, and welcome back to TCG Madness. And today's video, we're taking a look at yet another starter deck from Altered TCG. This time, we are going to be taking a look at the Muna starter deck. Now, I think both Muna and Bravos should be your go-to when you are entering Altered TCG. I think these two decks are the better starter decks, given what we've seen so far. I do think, though, however, if you play test, you will find that out to be true. I think they're better than the Axiom, the Yasmir, and the Lyra decks. Axiom and Orders as well, both kind of just use tokens. They're really not that great, but they're still good cards. Muna and Bravos kind of seem to have the best factions, the best synergy for their cards. Yasmir and Lyra specifically, a little more high risk, high reward. So if you like to have more gamble decks, definitely go with that one. Yasmir plays a lot of removal, a lot of bounce spells, a lot of resupply, sabotage, stuff like that. Muna and Bravos to me are both straightforward thinkers, right? Bravos, aggro, play fast, play often, hit you hard, and that's it. That's what they want to do. Muna is no different. It's a pretty straightforward deck. Play creatures, buff them up, give them a lot of boosts, get anchored so they can't get, so they're not removed. Stuff like that. They're both those decks have great synergy. So in my opinion, if you were to pick any of these starter decks, I highly recommend those. However, I think all these starter decks are pretty good, except for Orders. I think Orders is pretty weak and definitely needs a lot of retooling. And in this video, we're going to be doing what we have done in all the other videos in the past. We're going to take a look at this deck, we're going to take a look at the contents inside, then we're going to remove some cards, and then we're going to, whatever cards we decide to remove, anywhere between 10 to 15 cards, we're going to add that exact same number back to this deck, round out the rares, put some really good cards, put some better synergy cards. This way you can purchase a starter deck, purchase the cards you want, and then this way you have a pretty good deck that you should be able to play with, have a good time with, and probably compete against some of these other top decks. So with that being said, let's go ahead and crack into things. Let's go ahead and crack into this Muna deck. If you guys are new and if you are watching this video right now, please do me the big favor, hit that like button. If you're new, consider hitting that subscribe button. Don't forget to also hit that notification bell so you guys never miss when I drop a video. Comment, do all that good stuff, like, share, really would appreciate it. Helps out the growth of the channel. So here we have it, the Muna deck. I'm very excited to get into this one. I'm very interested to see the final product of the Muna deck. So far, for the final product, it does seem to be, pretty consistent across the board with the rares, with the kind of cards they put in there. There really hasn't been a whole lot of surprises for me, as far as from when I played on Board Game Arena versus the finished product that I have in hand. So of course we get our typical, scan the code there, and then of course we get the typical hero of the deck. This one is Taja and Nara. It does have a 2 reserve, 2 landmarks, and it does say the first character you play each afternoon gains 1 boost. So again, like I said, pretty straightforward when it comes to Muna and Bravos. This card, again, hero pretty much tells you exactly what this deck wants to do. Play characters, boost them, give them anchor. That's pretty much what green likes to do. So pretty good there. Let's go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes of this deck. We do get a Kitsune, which is a 2/2. Each player gets a draw card. Not a card that I particularly like to play, so I'll probably get removed in the deck. We also have Spindle Harvest. Let's see if we get a play set. We do get a play set of those ones, so not bad. The Daughter of Yggdrasil. Target opponent draws a card. Again, another card that I just not a fan of. I'm not a fan of always giving my opponent stuff at all. The Anari, a 3/2 for a 3/1/3. Pretty strong there. We get a play set of that one. We have Mana Druid. It's a 3/2. So there we go. We also have Saronis, a 4/3 for a 4/4/4. So not bad there. A Beauty Sleep. This is a card I don't think I've seen. A Beauty Sleep. It's a 1/3. Target character gains a sleep, which is a pretty good ability. It's also like a it's not as good as Anchored, but it's kind of like Anchored, except for when you have a card that says asleep. Basically, during dusk, ignore its statistics. So you play a card, if it has a sleep, it's pretty much dead on arrival right there, but it'll sit there, and then on the next round, next turn, basically, it will lose a sleep, and it'll actually gain its stats back. I'm be honest with you guys, I played around with a sleep for a little bit on Board Game Arena. Not really a good ability at the moment, but I do think if it has more support, it can be a good ability. I do think Anchored's just better, just because you're pretty much losing those stats, puts you right behind the 8-ball. We have a Sneezer Shroom. I did like this card a lot. It's a 2/2 for a 1/1/1, but it has that Anchored ability, so I do like that one. Do we get the rare? Yes, we do. So we get the rare Sneezer Shroom, which I like this one too, because at noon, it gains an additional boost. So for a 2/2, basically now you get 2s across the board. We also have Young Su Verdant Weaver for a 3/3, 3 across the board. If you control 2 or more plants, I gain 2 boost. Not bad there. We also get the rare version of it, which basically is a discounted for a 2/2. Instead of being 3/3, we just get 2 2s across the board. And if you gain 2 or more plants, gain the 2 boost. So not bad there. We also have Nurture, which is a great spell. Up to 2 target characters gain 1 boost. It's a really, really, really good card there. We also get the rare version of Nurture for a 3/2, and it says up to 2 target characters gain 2 boosts, so definitely a card that was pretty good in this deck. We also have Coniferal Cone Man. Let's see, we get a play set of those ones. Yes, we do, plus the rare version of the Cone Man. He's a 4/4, and it also gains that Anchored ability, so pretty good there. Meditation Training, target character with a hand cost of 3 or less gains Anchored. So again, you see what I'm talking about? Pretty straightforward. Boost characters, give them Anchored, don't let them leave. Like, that's pretty good. Another rare Meditation training as well. And we also get the Pavarti for a 4/3, a rare deity. 3/03, and it says target character gains Anchored. I like that a lot. We also get the Lyra Cloth Dancer. 3/2 for 0/32, up to 1 target character gains Fleeting. Again, I don't like that that's card even in here. Physical Training. Now, this is interesting. We get an out-of-faction rare Physical Training. I actually do like this in this deck as well, because target character gains 3 boosts. That's really, really good there, too, especially for this deck. And that rounds out the entire deck, plus, of course, the tokens, the lands, all the stuff you need to play a game of Altered TCG. Now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to go through this deck. I'm going to go ahead and remove some cards, and then we're going to take out those cards, and I'm going to add whatever cards I decide to take out. If I take out 10, 12, 15, whatever, we're going to add that exact same number. We're going to give this deck some much better synergy. All right, now for the cards that we've taken out of the Muna deck. Starting with the rares. We took out the copy of Physical Training. Good card, good out-of-faction rare, and even though we are doing the boosting route for this deck, we do have some better options with actually getting characters out on the field and being able to boost them. So without playing a spell, having too many spells clogging up, especially if there's just one copy of it, we're going to take that one rare out. The other rare we're going to take out is the Lyra Cloth Dancer. Has no business being in this deck whatsoever. It's a 3/2 for an 0/32 that has target character gains Bleeding. Doesn't really belong in this deck, but there is, if you really wanted to keep this, you could, because there is something that we were going to put in this deck that would actually have this ability benefit it, but I took it out because I had better options to take out. Alright, those are the 2 rares we took out. Now for the cards that we took out, that were just basically the commons, we took out 1 copy of Beauty Sleep. Too many spells in this deck, don't need it clogging up my hand. We took out the entire staple of the Kitsune. It's not a bad card, it's a 2/2, so it's very cost efficient for a 0/32, but I don't like this ability. Each player draws a card. I don't like giving my opponent the option to draw stuff. So if you want to keep it, you can, but I felt like it was not necessary to keep this in the deck at all. The other card we took out was the Inari. It's a 3/2 basic for a 3/1/3. Not a bad card, pretty powerful deity, but we went with more plants because the plants have better benefits than stuff like this. So we took out all of the copies of the Inari. We took out the Daughter of Yggdrasil as well, just a couple of these ones, because it's a 3/3 for a 5/5/3. I don't like this ability right here. If you went with the rare version of this card, then you'll both get to draw a card. So for a 3/3, both you guys drawing cards and having this type of stat line is pretty good. I don't like being able to get my opponent to draw a card. So just took out the 1 copy of that one. We ended up keeping one of them as well. So the other copies we take out were the Mana Druid, a 3/2, again, basic card for a 3/2/2. However, though, I do like this right here, this little quick action that you could take. Target character with a hand cost of 3 or less gains Anchored. So again, if you wanted to keep that in there as well, you could. I just took out the 1 just because, again, I don't need all of those 3 copies clogging up my hand. Ceronius was another one I put out for a 4/3 for a 4 across the board. Pretty strong as well, but again, we just don't need this. We have better options. And then we took out 1 copy of the Coniferal Cone Man for a 5/5. Does have I gain Anchored if you play it from anywhere, hand or the reserve. Not bad, but we actually went up with something a little bit better. The direction we took this, so if you were counting, by the way, that's 15 cards. I took out 15 cards of the Muna deck. Now, the direction we took with this deck is I ended up taking this deck to a totally different direction than I think that this actual starter deck wants you to take. The starter deck plays very powerful cards that you just want to basically boost them. I went with, I want to boost, I want synergy with plants because plants have great synergy with each other. And then I went with a very sneaky way to win the game outright. And I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. Let's go ahead and shift over to the cards I added. Okay, now we're here at Altered GG. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the cards that I added to this Moon deck. Now, first off, we only have 6 rares, so let's go ahead and round out those rares. Let's get an even 15 like we're supposed to have in this deck. Keep in mind, when I'm building these decks, however, I don't know what your unique situation looks like, so there are going to be a little bit of an adjustment as well. I always want to throw that in there just in case anybody comes at me and says, oh, what about the uniques? If you have a unique that synergizes with this deck, which you probably will, and if it's a very powerful unique card, you're probably going to want to add it to this deck, so that goes without saying. So with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the rares that I added. Starting with the Aloe Vera, we're going to go ahead and do 3 copies of this card. I absolutely love this card. It's a 3/3 for a 2/2/4. That's pretty powerful just on its own. But right here, I love this ability. If you play it out of your hand or out of your reserve, just pay 1 mana to give it anchored. I love that ability. Be able to play this from your hand or out of your reserve. So essentially for 4 mana, you're going to get a 2/2/4 that also basically says, hey, I get anchored now and I'm not going out. I'm not going anywhere this time. For 4 mana to be able to do that, that's pretty powerful basically on its own. Not to mention, with the hero that you have, you're going to be able to boost it up as well. So now you have a 2/2/4 with boosted. That's going to become a 3/3/5, and it's going to have anchor. It's going to stay there the next turn. If you have something like a cheap nurture out of your hand or out of your reserve, for just a couple of more mana, you're going to be able to boost this thing up, basically giving your next turn just that much of an advantage. Because that anchored is, again, it says right here, during rest, I don't go to the reserve, and I lose anchor. So in other words, once you end your turn, that card basically stays on the field for 1 more go around, and it keeps those boosts as well too. So you're just going to eventually get so much value out of this card right here from having it anchored, which means the next turn you're going to have a huge leg up, whatever it's, if aloe vera is on your hero or on your expedition, your opponent basically is going to have to deal with that one way or another, and I kind of like that. I also like this little bottom ability too, at noon resupply for the top card of your deck in your reserve. It's pretty basic. I actually like that a lot. You get a lot of value out of 1 card here. Alright, moving on to our next rare, so that takes care of 3 copies of those ones. The next rare we're going to add to the deck, we're going to add 2 copies of this beautiful Dracaena 3/3 for a 0/1/1. But what I like about this card, you play out of your hand or out of your reserve, it gains anchored again. At noon, it gains 2 boost. I really like this card a lot. It also has, you'll also notice too, it's a character of a dragon and a plant. If you'll notice too, aloe vera, also a plant. You'll notice that theme throughout the cards that I added. A lot of plants, a lot of good synergy with plants. So rounding out some more of our rares, I like this card a lot because it does gain 2 boost at noon, both times, and it gets anchored twice, out of your hand or out of your reserve. It's a pretty good card. I like this one. Definitely think it deserves to be in the deck. The next rare is your ultimate win condition. Now, we don't have any land permanents in this, we have no landmarks in this deck at all. The other 2 starter decks, we had some landmarks. This one, we have 0. None whatsoever. So we gotta make sure we actually add some of those and actually use them to our advantage. This card right here is your ultimate win condition. You play this card if you can meet all the conditions within the next 2 turns. And I say that not jokingly, like honestly, if you play this, if you have this card in your hand, in your opening hand, you want to see this card in your opening hand. If you have it, you hold on to it and you wait to use it when you can meet the conditions in your next turn or 2. Because when you play it, you get to draw a card. And then it says, at dusk, if you control a fleeting character, and another anchored character, and yet another asleep character, you win the game. If you control all 3 of those right there, fleeting, anchored, and asleep, you're going to win the game outright at dusk. It's a very good card, and meeting all 3 of those conditions is not, it's not easy, but it's also not impossible with the way I built this deck. And you're going to only want 2 copies of this. You don't want 3 because you don't want it clogging up your hand. And it's really not it's your ultimate win condition, but it's not really your first go-to win condition. Because if you can meet those conditions in the next 2 turns, you play it. If you can't, you're going to go the other route that I built this deck around. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. The next rare we're adding to the deck is 2 copies of Kodama. This will round out all your rares to 15. This is a very nice card. It's a 2/2 for a 3/3/3. Sounds pretty good on face, but we do, however, when we play it out of our hand, it does gain a sleep. During dusk, ignore my statistic. During rest, I don't go to the reserve and I lose a sleep. So essentially, you're going to play it, it's going to be dead on arrival, which is okay, that's fine. And then the next turn, you should be set up to do some business. The reason why we're also adding this card to the deck as well, too, because it has that one ability right there, sleep. Now, if you notice all the other cards, right, for 1 mana, you can have this card gain anchored. When you play this out of anywhere, hand or reserve, it gains anchored. If you have this card, if you have anchored, fleeting, or asleep, you're going to win the game. This card, when it comes out, it gains a sleep. So right there, the first 3 characters that I've added, and it's a plant, you'll notice that in a second too, it's all have more synergy. All of these cards have good synergy. They all are meeting certain criteria. The other thing too, the reason why we're adding the rare version of this card to the deck is that this bottom ability right here. If it goes to the reserve, we can take a quick action to actually give target character with a hand cost of 3 or less, and we can have that gain anchored. This has anchored, and this has anchored. These are all stuff you really get. Fleeting, anchor, and slave. If you have all 3 of those abilities, you're going to win the game if this card is out as well. So there we go. We can meet all our criteria with the cards that you have added. You're just going to do a lot of manipulation and make sure you have the right mana, which is why I said if you have that oak card in your opening hand, the Lyra Festival, you got to make sure within the next 2 turns you play it, because 4 is not, cost efficient at all. Playing this card for 4 mana is probably going to basically, you know, you're probably going to end your turn right there. Maybe you can play one more card like a Spindle Harp or something, which would be nice. But you got to really make sure that you have all 3 of these abilities in the next 2 turns, or you're pretty much just going to be SOL. So again, Kodama will round out your rares. Adding 2 of those will be pretty good. The next card is the other landmark that I wanted to put in this deck because it's Bountiful Meadow for a 2/2. It's just a regular version, and it just basically says the next plant you play this turn costs 1 less. You play it for 2, you tap it, and then the next plant you play costs 1 less. Well, Kodama's a plant, so for 3 mana, you can play Bountiful Meadow, tap it, and then get Kodama out for 1, which is really good, by the way. To get this guy out for just 1, 3 mana, you're going to be setting up real good in the next couple of turns by doing all of this. Bountiful Meadow is really good because we have nothing but plants. These plants are very cost effective. In other words, they have a little bit of a higher mana cost, so the mana curve is just not right with this deck. Another card you probably want to see in your opening hands, both of these landmarks, in my opinion. I really do think if you're playing a game and you built this deck, you're going to want both of these cards in your opening hand. Specifically, I personally think Bountiful Meadow is definitely a little more, a better card in your opening hand than Lyra Festival. But if you get Lyra Festival, again, just make sure you start setting up, building that thing, making sure you got your statistics right. You're sitting there, you look, okay, if I play this, I'm going to get anchored. If I play this, I have a sleep. Just make sure you're doing all right. If you have both of them, you're really going to be in cruise control. Your opponent's going to have to deal with them one way or another. Next card we're going to add to the deck is just 1 copy of Pavardi. It's a 4/2 out of your hand, so 4 out of the hand, 2 out of the reserve. That's the reason why this extra card's going in there. There's definitely an argument can be made. You can take out another card and put this card in there because it's not a plant, but that 2 out of your reserve cost is very good. Plus, when you play it out of your hand, target character is going to gain anchored. So you're going to do 2 things, right? You're going to play out of your hand. You can, again, you notice all the things. We're giving a sleep. We're giving anchored. Like, we're doing all of these things. That's why the other card, I think, what rare was it that I took out of this deck? The Lyra Cloth Dancer. You can make an argument to actually put both 2 more copies of that rare to actually give your own stuff fleeting. If you gave something fleeting, you already have Anchor and Sleep, and you had that festival out, you're going to win the game. It's actually really cool. So an argument can be made. I took it out though because I think we have better ways of getting fleeting out, which is the one thing you're going to be missing. Playing this for 4 and then actually playing it for 2 on your next turn and giving fleeting to it. And if you already have something with anchored and a sleep, you're going to win the game. So pretty good card there. Your ultimate win condition, oh, by the way, just 1 copy of this one. Your ultimate win condition, we're going to add 2 copies of this bad boy right here. This is the son of Yggdrasil. It's a 6/6 for a 6/3/3. It's a big body 6/3/3, but it has gigantic. So if you play out of your hero or out of your expedition, you're gonna get the stats on both sides. Plus, if this is the first card you play out of your hand with your hero, you're going to boost this thing up immediately. So now you have a 7/4/4. That's really powerful to play on both sides. You know, there's not a lot of things your opponent can do to a 7/4/4 on both zones. It's kind of hard to match those stats. So that's your ultimate win condition. Then if you have something like Nurture, you can boost him up, and then pretty much you can just win by just playing him on one side of your board. Pretty much will allow you to win. The other card, honorable mention, so this is your ultimate win condition right here. The other honorable mention would have been to go with this route, but I didn't because it's a little more cost effective. It's a 7/7. Having 7 mana is very difficult. If you did want to put this in the deck, I would highly recommend skipping all of these cards that I just put up here and going with the mana ramp way of playing the game. But that's going to do it for me. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. That's going to do it for the Muna deck. Again, 15 cards out, 15 cards in. I do think if you build it this way, you're going to have a very good time playing this game. Hope you guys have enjoyed this build. The next deck we'll take a look at will be the Lyra deck, which is a high-risk, high-reward deck. So I hope you guys are interested into that one. If you are, again, hit that subscribe button. If you're new, consider it at the least. Don't forget to also hit that like button, comment down below, like, share, do all that good stuff. I really would appreciate it. And as always, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. See you guys next time.